Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company, the bank that puts you first. They can meet your banking and financing needs for personal, agricultural, business, commercial, mortgages, and so much more. Visit firstbank.com to learn more.
It's hate week, meaning this Virginia Tech football season comes to an end with the Commonwealth Clash on Saturday. Let's preview the matchup between the Hokies and the Who's on episode 457 of the Tech Sideline podcast, which starts right now. We're recording on Wednesday, November 26, 2025, from the Tech Solutions studio in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. If you're watching the show on YouTube, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and refer the show to a friend. I'm your host, Riley Klaus, and today I'm joined to my left by lead analyst and columnist Chris Coleman. Across the way, our founder and general manager, Will Stewart. To my right is our managing editor, David Cunningham, and producing the show behind the scenes, as always, is Mr. Nick Brown. Now, we're here to talk about the upcoming matchup on Saturday between Virginia Tech and Virginia, which will be played on Saturday, November 29th at a 7 p.m. primetime slot. It'll be in Scott Stadium in Charlottesville, Virginia, and at the moment, the Cavaliers are favored by 9.5 points. In terms of history, it's a long one between Virginia Tech and UVA, as Tech leads the series 62-38 in 5 ties all time, with the Hokies having won the last 4 and 19 of the last 20. But now as we go to the present, Virginia is 9-2 and in play for an ACC title. And with the rankings just coming out last night, they are 18th in the latest ranking. So for them, playoffs are on the line in this game.
Yeah, so wait a minute. All of our documentation will say they're ranked 17th because that's where they were in the regular polls. They're number 18 in the CFP, but we'd already done roster cards and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's not a normal situation. Obviously, there have been times in the past where this game has been for the Coastal Division title. I think that's happened 3 times. But you haven't had a situation where Virginia Tech is bad and Virginia's going for a conference title game. So Virginia Tech is very much in spoiler mode this week.
Virginia Tech doesn't have a ton to play for except to beat UVA,
which is
UVA. Everything to play for. Like we talked to some of the guys after the Miami game on Saturday, Kelvin Gillingham, who's a Richmond guy, and he's like, dude, I don't care about anything else except beating UVA this week. Like these guys are fired up.
He's a great talker.
Kelvin Gilliam's a great interview, but doesn't look like much on paper, but it's everything to play for. And I think we've seen the Hokies play well against some really good teams this year for stretches of the game.
Right.
We saw them play Miami close for a bit, and they ran the ball well. We saw them play Louisville pretty close for a bit. We saw them lead Vanderbilt at halftime, but they haven't been able to play 4 quarters. That's the challenge this week.
Yeah, so I'm going to preview a little stat time with Scott Glessner. The last time an unranked Virginia Tech team played a ranked UVA team was 1991. And talking about Virginia Tech being bad and the whole season coming down, you got to beat UVA. Well, that's like I graduated in 1987, and the Hokies were a bad football team in 87, 88. Not that great in 89 or 90. And I remember even in those years where Tech was going 2-9 and 3-8 and UVA was a really strong football program at that time, those were knockdown, drag-out battles. They were decided by 1 score often. And yeah, it did come down to that.
That was 38-0 in 91.
That was 91, yes. And we'll get into that.
Well, you talk about some close games for UVA. They are 9-2 as mentioned this year, but they've been in 3 overtime games. They've had to pull some out late.
They have, and they were fortunate against UNC when UNC fumbled the ball over the goal line when they were about to score. It resulted in a touchback. But at the same time, their 2 losses were also very, very close and could have gone either way. So they've got a lot of experience in close games this year. They've also got some experience in a few blowouts as well. Their offense got a lot of hype early in the season, but they really hit a wall midway through the season. It was their defense that kept their head above water, like you can see in the. Well, starting with the Louisville game, they scored 2 defensive touchdowns to win that game in overtime. Got the safety to beat Washington State. held UNC to 16 points, did good work against Cal, kept them in it against Wake Forest. It's really their defense, in my opinion, that's kept their heads above water and has been the more consistent unit for them this year.
And didn't Duke score late in that game to make that?
Oh, that game was never close.
Yeah,
I watched it, yeah.
Yeah, I think the UVA offense gets a lot of praise because Chandler Morris, and that is a very good offense. But as Chris said, I mean, the defense has been like rock solid all season long. Now, we just saw the Hokies run the ball pretty effectively against a really stout Miami run game. But Virginia Tech's challenge is to be balanced, and that's something the Hokies have struggled with. And I just, if in this one, it feels like if you're not balanced, if all you're going to be able to do is run the ball, very similar to the Miami game where the passing attack is very hit or miss, maybe until it's too late. You know, we saw the Hokies connect with Aiden Green a couple different times late in that game. It's just, you got to be more consistent for 4 quarters. And this is a Virginia team that is very senior laden. Basically, its entire starting 11 on both sides of the ball is seniors or graduate students, and knows how to win close games. And you look at that Florida State game, it could have gone either way. And that would have been, at this point, a pretty bad loss for the Cavaliers had they lost that game to the Noles at home in overtime. At that point, Florida State was ranked. They gutted out that Louisville game. And then the North Carolina game probably should have lost, won by like a yard. So this is a team that has figured out ways to win games, which good teams do.
So the entire starting 11 on offense is either seniors or graduate students. Mm-hmm. And over on defense, there are seniors, graduate students. They got 1 sophomore, 3 juniors, but one of those juniors I've got listed as Cam Robinson, but he's actually out for this game. I made up the roster card before we found that out. So, yeah, lots of experience.
So an experienced group on the field, and they are led by Tony Elliott as a head coach. And it feels like for him this year, this was a big one in terms of expectations going into the year as to where they are now.
Yeah, and he'll have to do it all over again next year because they lose 18 starters. And they've even got like a backup defensive end who's a graduate student who has 6 tackles for loss and 5 sacks. So they've got seniors backing up seniors. We heard they invested tremendously. They've got like 3 record-setting donations over the last couple of years, and they just poured it right into investing into this roster.
Yeah,
and you can tell it.
Yeah, I think UVA did so well in the offseason as far as rebuilding this thing. I mean, remember, Tony Elliott was hired at the same time Brent Pry was, and there's a reason why Tony Elliott kept his job and Brent Pry didn't. Now it'll be very interesting to see the difference next year once Hokies have James Franklin now, and Tony Elliott's going to have to do it all over again. But this has been a terrific season. They've needed a little bit of luck at times to kind of get through some wins, but he's done a really good job just turning things around. And if you think back to his very first season, 2022, that game wasn't played because of the tragic shooting. He's really rallied this team, and it's taken them a little bit of time to get going. But I mean, this is like one of UVA's best teams in a very, very, very long time. Like a historic team. You're talking about they win this game and they're playing in Charlotte for the ACC championship game, and all they have to do is win that game and they go to the college football playoff. Like, these are high expectations for a UVA team that last year barely won a few games.
So you talk about investing in the roster, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the new NIL rules kicked in last July, where anything over $600 has to be reviewed by some Deloitte, some clearinghouse, and we won't get into that. I think everything's rubber stamped. But anyway, the money that UVA put into this roster was done before then.
Correct.
Yeah, they were smart enough to front load it, like Texas Tech did.
A lot of schools.
It's a very similar situation, actually. Yeah.
And some of that money perhaps helped them get their signal caller in Chandler Morris, who has a lot of experience and seems to be the engine for this offense.
Yeah, he's a guy who got knocked out of, I believe, the Wake Forest game, and they ended up losing. They had been hitting a wall offensively before that. Like, if you go to their first 4 games against FBS teams, and they averaged 499.5 yards per game and 43 points per game. But then their next 5 games, they were barely over 300 yards. And maybe averaging 21 or 22 points per game. And that's Louisville, Washington State, North Carolina, Cal, and Wake Forest. And then they seemed to get it back in their last game against Duke. How much of that was Morris, or how much of that was, Duke pretty much invested all their money in the quarterback and didn't leave enough money for anything else. I don't know. But I do think what is their real offense? The one that dominated early in the season, or the one that, quite frankly, that 5-game stretch, statistically, they were one of the worst offenses in the whole country.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, think about 320 yards a game and 21 points per game. That's terrible.
That's
terrible.
That's
like
like Springian.
That's like
Virginia Tech numbers.
Yeah,
exactly right. So Morris is good. And I think he is healthier now with a week off. But a lot of that completion percentage was built up early in the season when the offense was running on all cylinders. Now, what he is, he's a 24-year-old, 6th-year senior, I believe.
Where did he transfer from?
He started off at Oklahoma, then
TCU and
then North Texas, now UVA.
Was there much demand for his services? Like, we're talking about how much money UVA put into NIL. Was anybody else looking at Chandler Morris that you know of?
I mean, probably.
Big UVA follower that you are?
He's Chad Morris's son. The old Clemson offensive coordinator.
Legendary Chad Morris.
One time or two-time head coach somewhere that burned out.
Did not work out. But he's small. Or he's Michael Brewer with better players around him. He's about 190 pounds. Great fuel for the passing game. A good enough runner.
Yeah.
And kind of smallish so he can get banged up. He's basically Michael Brewer, not surrounded by freshman receivers. He's Michael Brewer surrounded by 10 seniors.
No, that's a pretty good
and
comparison.
graduate students.
That's a pretty good comparison. And, I mean, he's got good skill players, which I'm sure we're going to get into in a second. But yeah, I mean, he like Texas high school football royalty a little bit. You know, his dad, Phil Montgomery, made a comment that Andy put in his article yesterday, where one of the high schools Phil Montgomery was the head coach at. 2 years after he left, they hired Chad Morris as the head coach. And at the time, Chandler was a 2-year-old. Right. So the relationship between Phil Montgomery and that family go way back. And I mean, this is a guy who has really just elevated, like, you know, the rising tide lifts all boats. Chandler Morris has done that for the UVA offense. It's helped that he's got a lot of talent around him, but he's kind of a gamer. And I think you saw that early in the season. One of our buy or sell lines, I think, is Chandler Morris, like 300 plus yards.
Right. Total offense.
And of total offense. He hit it 3 times in the first 4 games, and the only other time he hit it this season was against Duke last week or 2 weeks ago. So this has been an up and down group. When it's at its peak, it's playing very, very well. And I think you saw that early in the season and in games at times like Florida State. But he also threw 3 picks in that game. So up and down, you kind of don't know what you're going to get, but I expect the Cavaliers coming off an open week, having all the time to prepare for this game. I mean, the last time this happened was 2019. I believe they had Liberty right before they played the Hokies and led right into that.
They basically had 3 weeks to prepare for that game.
Correct.
Right?
Led right into that
because Liberty
game.
wasn't that very good that year. But to answer your question about whether he was highly sought after, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't paying any attention, but I know he led the American in completion attempts, I think completion percentage, maybe touchdowns. I think he led them in a bunch of statistical categories, and even though he's a little small, that you know, that can get you recruited. And you know, he was a good player for TCU the year before that. He started some games for him, and again, I think there were some injuries, but you know, he had a pretty good passer rating that year. So he's a natural passer that sees the field really well. He's got a feel for the pocket. He can roll out and make plays when the play breaks down. You're not going to see him like involved in like the traditional running game too much because of his size, but he can do it.
He can make plays. Yeah, so I just went and found Pete Thamel's article from December on ESPN when he committed, and it said Oklahoma State, UCF, and Memphis were kind of the other suitors. So the Cavaliers, I think, got a little bit of a steal. And I think he runs their offense very well.
Right.
Well, and in the only game I've seen him, the whole game seen play was the Florida State game, and he made some impressive plays in that game.
While also throwing 3 picks. Right.
That I don't recall. I just remember the plays where I was like, "Oh man!"
Well, it was, and most of those came in the first half too.
They did,
and
the picks did.
Yeah, and Florida State was also throwing picks. It was interception fest in that first half, and then UVA really did a good job of settling down. And it helps that he's got a really good running back and some really good receivers.
Yeah, you mentioned those. Let's get into that discussion first with the ground attack. Jamari Taylor has
the
been
running
the guy
back
for UVA. Yes.
You think Virginia Tech should have tampered with him a little bit more?
A little bit harder.
Dude, Tech's got plenty of running backs.
That was sarcasm.
They should have saved that money for some other positions rather than tampering with him. But
no, you got to, for people that don't know the story, you got to fill in the reference. Which one of you guys wants to do that?
North Carolina Central coach back in the late summer, early season, like September, August.
Oh, it was during.
Or was it during the ACC kickoff
It was
around
during,
then?
yeah, it was when the conference kickoff.
So it was around July, and the North Carolina Central coach mentioned that there was a Virginia Tech staffer on the sidelines of one of NC Central's games last season. Thought he was tampering with Jamari Taylor. Now, yeah,
during the game,
we asked Brent Pry about it, and Brent Pry was like, "What? Like, I don't."
It's like we're investigating it, and
it turned out.
we're checking into it until y'all stopped asking about it.
The word we found out was it was Stu Holt. He grew up or knows the NC Central athletic director very well, and was like a guest and had like a pass to be with the AD on the sideline.
I like it, man. That's sneaky.
So,
I like it.
But the Hokies didn't end up going after him. You can argue whether or not they should have. I think they've got good running backs in their own right, but this dude is really, really good.
Yeah, he's a good
He's
player.
kind of a little mini Tyrion Stewart, I think. A little bit of a bowling ball at times.
Yeah, and he's a really good receiver. He doesn't average that many yards per catch, just like 5.5 or something like that. But I think he's got 35, 38 receptions, something like that, which is another sign that Morris is really smart, knows how to hit his check down. And, when you can gain 5 yards every time you hit your check down, I mean, that adds up.
So let's fill in the blanks for people. Jamari Taylor, 187 rushes, 917 yards.
Leads the ACC in both those categories.
Yeah, 4.9 yards per carry, 13 touchdowns rushing. So, and he goes beyond just the numbers. If you watch him play, he can break a tackle. He's a good player.
Yeah, I think you go back to that Florida State game, and there were a couple different runs he had in that game. It was a Friday nighter, all the lights on the Noles and the Cavaliers in Charlottesville, and he had a couple different plays where it looked like he was tied up in the backfield or at the line of scrimmage, and you just broke 1-2 tackles and boom, was off to the races. I mean, this is a guy who he kind of just makes things happen, and honestly, it's funny. It reminds me a little bit of Bashal Tootin, another guy from the FCS ranks from North Carolina. That was North Carolina A&T, but you go to one of the schools in Virginia and you're playing around a good offense and you're used properly and you kind of take off.
So he's a talented guy in the backfield, and it doesn't stop there. When you go to the receiver room, it's pretty balanced. Trell Harris has been their leading target among that group.
Yeah, he's a good player. He'll line up mostly to the outside, some in the slot. They just got a good trio of guys there, and they're all senior transfers. Their tight end, Sage Ennis, is a transfer from Clemson. He's caught 17 catches, but he's second on the team in touchdown receptions with 4. He's a Clemson transfer. This offense as a whole, man, I think every starter except for 3 are transfers. And the best overall player on offense is their center, Brady Wilson, who was one of the top offensive linemen in the portal, period, as a center. Centers in the portal, they are expensive.
Few and far between.
Especially a proven one like him. And I forget where he played. It was UAB or something like that.
Somewhere to UAB to somewhere to here.
Yeah, okay. And top player. And he's really made their offense better on the interior this year because obviously they couldn't really block anybody last year. That was one of their big issues. I think Calandria was a pretty good quarterback. Their offensive line was just terrible. Calandria's had a good year at UNLV. It's just their offensive line's
Is that where Dan Mullen's coaching?
Yeah.
UNLV? All
Yeah.
right. Love it. All
I
comes
think
together.
his other quarterback there is Alex Orji.
Yeah. That's funny.
Anthony Calandria and Alex Orji.
Quarterback.
Yeah, wow. I think, Riley, this trio of UVA wide receivers, I mean, they've got some depth behind
Go
them.
ahead and give the numbers on them. We have a habit of talking about players without giving the numbers.
You can talk about statistics.
Yeah.
So Harris, their leading receiver, Trell Harris, 51 receptions for 766 and 5 touchdowns this year.
15 yards a catch,
according to your notes. And Ross, their second leading receiver, Cam Ross, he's a graduate student. So you got a senior and graduate student. Ross has 42 catches for 458 and 2 touchdowns.
Dangerous in the return game, also has a kickoff return for a touchdown. Also a pretty decent punt returner.
Yeah. So, I mean, they've got guys. They've got skill players. Honestly, it reminds me a little bit of the last 2 seasons at Virginia Tech, where you had this transfer wide receiver room of Stephen Gosnell, Daquan Felton, Jalen Lane, Ollie Jennings. They've got guys. I think UVA's taking advantage of it a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, you can say that.
So some talented supporting cast there, and to round it out, Chris, you started alluding to it, but the offensive line has a whole lot of experience, which has helped them out as well.
But they do, and to their credit, they've developed a few of those guys themselves, but a couple of them are transfers. It's the transfers are Wilson and I believe Drake Metcalf, their right guard. It's actually one of the smaller offensive lines that Virginia Tech faces this year, but at the same time, it's let's see, senior, graduate student, graduate student, graduate student, graduate student. So these guys clearly have believed in redshirting at their various points wherever they were, whether that was at UVA or somewhere else. But they've done a good job of developing within from an offensive line that struggled last year, but also supplementing it by getting what was probably the best center in the entire portal.
The biggest challenge this week, I think, is the Virginia Tech offense needs to be better, of course, but the Hokies have to get pressure up front defensively. They've gone 5 games this year without having a sack. And they haven't forced many turnovers either. If you want to make something happen in this game, if you want to pull a kind of upset, that's a very good UVA offense, assuming they don't lateral it to an offensive lineman in a crucial situation. Like you have to wreak a little bit of havoc up front. You got to get some pressure. We have not seen Virginia Tech have many sacks this year. Didn't have any against Miami. Carson Beck was able to just stand back there and pick guys off.
27 of 32.
Yeah, and started 11 for 11. Yeah. And I mean, if they've got, this is a good quarterback in Chandler Morris behind a good offensive line, a lot of veterans. If he can just stand back there and dump guys off. I mean, we had when David Teal was on here with us yesterday, he said that UVA doesn't have a guy like Malachi Toney for Miami, but has a deeper wide receiver room, UVA, than Miami.
Yeah, I can buy that totally. Yeah. Absolutely.
And as a result, you got to rattle Chandler Morris a little bit, get some pressure. It's going to be cold. You got to...
The hits hurt a little bit more when it's cold.
Yeah, you got to attack him a little bit more. And, I mean, if UVA might have a field day if it's very similar to past couple games where, the Hokies haven't been able to get any pressure up front and you're kind of just, I don't know, getting pushed around.
It's tricky. You want to generate pressure. You can't do that with a 4-man rush, obviously, but you don't want to expose your youthful secondary and linebacker core. Maybe you should just blitz a lot, though, and just play straight man. Straight man is easier for young players than zone. Zone is so meticulous. When do I pass this guy off from my zone to this guy's zone? And I've got to be looking to my left also because there might be somebody running into my zone from that side. And between, the linebacker depth and the safety depth, that void between them has been exploited so many times if you're Virginia Tech this year. And Morris is the type of quarterback who can exploit that, just as much as Carson Beck did, to be honest with you. He's not as tall, so a few more of his plays are going to come maybe from outside the pocket. I probably would play more man if I was Virginia Tech, because I just don't. This team's just not good in zone, and I'm not suggesting they're great in man because they're not. But it's
you got to do something.
It's not as much on your plate in man coverage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it allows you to blitz more.
Yeah, you don't have to think as much.
If the Hokies can get pressure and get a couple sacks, I mean, the last time we really saw this Virginia Tech defensive front really get any kind of pressure on a consistent basis was the South Carolina opener.
I wondered if you were going to say that, yeah.
Yeah, and we also saw what happened to that South Carolina offensive line.
Oh, my gosh.
And offensive coordinator.
The O-line coach got fired.
And they've got a quarterback who, well, I shouldn't make fun of this because Tech's quarterback just did the same thing, but they've got a quarterback who doesn't understand in a late game situation. It's third and a mile and fourth and a mile, and you should probably throw the football instead of just, running and getting sacked. It's really bad.
I may have been a little angry after watching Kyron run out of bounds on fourth down.
Yeah, I knew. I remember it.
Your Slack messages would confirm that
because it reminded me exactly of what I'd watched the previous week.
I think you said I'm turning this off or I'm leaving.
Well,
I don't know if you. Whatever. I don't know if you
people
were
get
there.
mad at me when I leave the stadium in a fit of anger. So I would never admit to that.
Well, those are some things to watch for Saturday. We talked about UVA's offense, but before we get into their defense and other elements of the game, Will, what are some numbers we need to be keeping our eyes out for?
So welcome to Stat Time with Scott Glessner, which for this show is presented by Rich Webb, Rich Webb Driving Enterprise IT. Rich Webb has been the proud host of Tech Sideline for 20 years.
Wow.
when David was 5 years old?
6.
6. Nick, how old were you 20 years ago?
3.
Nick was 3.
Only 2 UVA wins since then.
Wow.
Man, there's a whole.
One.
Nick said only one UVA win since then.
All right,
Gosh,
so
you're young. Oh my gosh.
So get ready to get a history lesson here, folks. I don't know. I always call Chris and Andy the encyclopedias. I don't know if even you go back this far, Chris. I know David clearly does it, but I remember this season. So the last time an unranked Virginia Tech team played a ranked UVA team was 1991. And yes, Virginia Tech lost to number 20 UVA 38-0. But there's a story there. So I remember that season clearly. That was the season from hell of 5 straight road games. So Virginia Tech opened at home by beating JMU 41-12. Then, in order, on the road at NC State, they lost 7-0. Will Fuhrer threw 5 interceptions, including at least 1 in the end zone, maybe 2. NC State went 9-3 that year. Next week, actually, they took a week off, and then 2 weeks later, traveled to South Carolina, lost 28-21. I don't remember that game. Then they went to Oklahoma, and I don't remember where Oklahoma was ranked. They may have been a top 10 team, and they gave Oklahoma a hard time. They lost 27-17, and I remember Ryan Williams, not the running back clearly, but the club-footed kicker Tech had back then, kicked like a 50-yard field goal at the end of the first half. So they gave Oklahoma a hard time, but lost that one. Then they traveled to West Virginia, and in this stretch of being away from home, that was the only game that they won. The Hokies won at West Virginia 20-14. That game was delayed by something like an hour or an hour and a half because of lightning. And ultimately, it ended in a goal line stand. And if Jeff Holland's around, he'll probably correct me on this if I get it wrong. It ended in a goal line stand with the Hokies stopping West Virginia, forcing a fumble on like 4th and goal, and the Hokies win 20-14. Then the next week, and this is a famous football game in Virginia Tech lore, Virginia Tech was supposed to have a home game against Florida State, but they sold it to the Citrus Bowl in Orlando for $1 million.
Just like they sold the home game, Wisconsin to Charlotte.
Yeah. So
I'm a fan.
$1 million was a lot of money back then. I remember one time looking at finances, and in 1995 or so, Virginia Tech's entire athletic budget was only like $16 million. Mm-hmm. So in 1991, $1 million was a lot of money. And again, it was supposed to be a home game against FSU. Dave Brain sold it for money. And I interviewed Dave years later, and it wasn't just me Dave said this to. He said it to a lot of people. He said, when I was in the Citrus Bowl and I saw our kids run out onto the field getting booed by a Florida State team, he said, I felt like I'd made a mistake and I was never going to make that kind of decision for money again. Hokies lost that one 33-20. Terrell Buckley had at least 1 interception.
Tech was
return.
winning the game in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and Tech they used to give Florida State, and Florida State was 11-2 that year. That was, when they were ascending. They used to give Florida State a hard time and then kind of cave at the end. So at that point, Virginia Tech's 2-4. Then they come home for a long stretch of road games, and I went to all these games, traveled from Charlottesville and saw all these in person. Beat Cincinnati 56-9. to go to 3-4. Beat Louisville 41-13 to go to 4-4. Beat Akron 42-24 to go to 5-4. So they're on the verge of, now you got East Carolina at home and Virginia on the road, and they're on the verge of making a bowl game for the first time since 1986. East Carolina went 11-1 that year, so they roll into Lane Stadium. They're a good football team. And I should have looked this up ahead of time. I might not have it exactly right, but I believe the Hokies were up 14-7 and late second quarter, early third quarter, driving for a touchdown to go up 21-7. They're on like the 5-yard line, and Rod Wooten was playing quarterback because Will Fuhrer had gotten hurt. Wooten checks from a running play into a passing play, proceeds to throw an interception to a guy named Greg Grandison, who ran it back 95 yards for a touchdown to tie it at 14. Now, I remember watching Greg Grandison, a linebacker, run 95 yards. It was this slow death, this agony. He's a linebacker, he's running, and nobody on Virginia Tech's team could catch him.
So it was like the Jamel Smith interception against or either Jamel Smith or Michael Hawks against Rutgers in 1998. Took it 96
a long
yards
time
and it
to
took forever.
unfold.
Yeah.
And so it was 14-14, and one of my particularly negative buddies turned and said, "That's it, we're going to lose." And we're like, "No, we're not." And yeah, they did. They proceeded to lose that game 24-17. So the opportunity to go to a bowl is out the window, and Virginia Tech mentally collapsed. And they rolled into Charlottesville the next week. Now, UVA went 8-3-1 that year. And Tech had beaten them 38-13 in Lane Stadium the year before.
And UVA had been ranked number 1 that season in
the
1990.
season,
Right. So
yeah.
that was a huge revenge game for them.
Yeah, so they went in there, and Chris Slade had 4 sacks, and Terry Kirby ran all over Virginia Tech, and they just whipped Virginia Tech 38-0. That's the last shutout by UVA in the series, of course. I mean, Virginia Tech scored in every game since 1995. And that's also, that game, 38-0, is the last time Virginia Tech scored fewer than 10 points in the rivalry. So Tech has scored at least 10 points in every game since 1992.
Well, if you remember, there was that, I think, 2017 game where it was 10-0.
10-0. Yeah, I looked that up the other day. I was like, really? I don't remember that. So did you know any of that history, David, that I just laid out? Yeah, it was.
I mean, I knew about the UVA game, but I didn't know about any of the other stuff. That's neat.
Oh, man, that was quite the dramatic season. So what about you? How much of that did you know?
I didn't start watching until 93.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the history, and when I wasn't watching it at the time. I knew Tech used to have a bunch of road games like that.
Yeah. Did you know the story about Dave Brains selling the?
yeah.
That's a pretty famous story. If you've been around here long enough, you've heard it. Let's see. The last time an unranked Virginia Tech team played an AP number 17 UVA was the sweeter than sugar 38-13 win in 1990, which we just discussed, where UVA at one point was number 1 in the country, but by the time Virginia Tech was done with them, they weren't even ranked. Virginia Tech has scored in the last 23 quarters against UVA, plus an overtime period. The last time Virginia Tech didn't score in a quarter against UVA was the first quarter of the 2018 game.
Yeah, that's probably
I think
coming
that
to an
streak will be broken this weekend.
You think the Virginia Tech will go scoreless in one of the
In a
quarters?
quarter,
of this?
end. A quarter, I think that's a safe bet.
Yeah. By the way, in doing my research for the preview, that 2018 game was the last time UVA was favored over Virginia Tech, and the Hokies won it 34-31. I also, and this is in the game preview that we'll publish later, the 2018 game was the Trey Turner one-handed catch in the corner of the end zone, spectacular catch. And what other remarkable play happened in the 2018 game?
That was a block punt.
No, a hint. It happened as time expired.
Oh, it was Ryan Willis running down. Yeah, we talked about that in the podcast on Monday. Ryan Willis threw a pick, and he chased the guy down as the time expired. Yeah.
So for those of you that don't remember that, Virginia Tech's on like UVA's 10-yard line. Ryan Willis throws an interception, and UVA defensive back starts off down the sideline, and he's got a touchdown. There are pictures of this defensive back is running down the sideline, and his teammates are celebrating in the background because they think he's going to score. So Ryan Willis gets on his horse and takes off running. Along the way, knocks over a referee. Folks, I'm telling you, go look at the game preview. I've got the video linked. It is awesome. And he runs that UVA defensive back down at like the Virginia Tech 10-yard line, and that is the last play of the first half.
It's the best interception in Virginia Tech history, the best thrown interception in Virginia Tech history.
In a lot of ways, probably saved that game.
It did, because they wound up only winning by 3 points.
Yeah. Well, and that was, talk about a chaotic game, fumbling and fumbling and fumbling in the end zone for the game. There was a lot of that. That
game ended with UVA fumbling in overtime, and Matua Poaka probably recovering it.
No, he was done by then.
I think it was Belmar, Emmanuel Belmar. But they scooped it up, and that was Virginia Tech's done it, because the Hokies looked like they sacked him, and then the ball came out, and they had scooped it up, and the whole team rushed onto the field.
Here's another streak that is in jeopardy. Virginia Tech has racked up over 450 yards in the last 6 meetings against UVA.
Each of the 6?
Each of the 6, the last 6 meetings. It's not an average. It's I believe every game.
Yet another streak that's going to end.
Yeah,
That is
I mean,
in danger.
last time the Hokies were in Charlottesville, Bashal Tootin.
I think he had 450 yards by himself.
Probably had 450 yards just running up the hill.
And that segues nicely into the next stat from Scott Glessner. Virginia Tech has had 5 100-yard rushers in the last 4 games against UVA.
So the Burmeister was the other one.
There you go. So
Yeah.
2024.
2021.
Tootin at 124. 2023, Tootin at 117. In 2021, Blackshear had 169. Burmeister at 115.
That was the game after Blackshear only had 2
Two
carries,
carries against Miami.
Chris Coleman's anger is evergreen.
Worse. Yeah.
And the 2020 COVID game, Khalil Herbert at 162 yards rushing. UVA has not had a 100-yard rusher in this series since
Bryce Perkins.
Bryce Perkins in
Oh,
2019.
he torched him, man.
Boo. Just
I will never get this out of my head. Sitting in the UVA press box, the open air,
working as a student.
the
You were a
silly
student,
open air
right?
press box as a student, and just the number of times Bryce Perkins just ran, just pulled it down and ran up the middle of the field, and there was no one around.
That was
Where
was
are you, Dax?
That was the first 2 drives of the game, and is honestly the worst game plan in Bud's career, in my opinion.
I agree.
Perkins had not shown the ability to complete passes down the field all season, and in tight situations. Tech had a pretty good secondary, so they were dropping Dax and Tisdale back in zone with like their backs turned to the line of scrimmage, and it just left a huge void, and he would just take off up the middle and for huge chunk yardage. And they were able to stop UVA after the first 2 drives when they changed their game plan. But I never understood why they went into that game with that game plan. It just spotted them 2 touchdowns. It just played to their strengths.
We love Bud, but I remember that clearly. So you guys mentioned lack of turnovers and sacks. So with Virginia Tech struggling with turnovers and sacks, this is an interesting flip stat. The last time Virginia Tech did not force a turnover was in 1999 against UVA.
Yeah.
They didn't have to.
The 31-7 win. Although Virginia Tech had 6 sacks in that game because that defense was amazing.
And that game was played in October or
It
September.
was like 3rd game of the year, I think. Something
or 4th,
like that.
yeah, so September.
Yeah. The last time Virginia Tech did not get a sack versus UVA was 1990's 38-13 win. Although Virginia Tech forced 6 turnovers in that game. So you got a game with no turnovers and 6 sacks, and a game with no sacks and 6 turnovers.
That's that's kind of wonky.
So here's another stat that's probably not in danger. Only one time this season has Virginia Tech had 9+ yards per pass attempt.
Allowed or had?
Offensively.
Okay.
Wofford. Virginia Tech has had 9+ yards per pass attempt in the last 5 games versus UVA.
Interesting.
So that one is in danger also. So we will pay attention to those this week, and that is Stat Time with Scott Glessner, sponsored by Rich Webb.
So something else to add. You mentioned the lines. It's very rare that UVA is favored in this series, especially they opened as double-digit favorites. This as 9.5 as it stands right now. You go back to 1987, the beginning of the Frank Beamer era. This would be the most UVA has ever been favored against Tech.
Wow. How do you look that up?
I know people. We got a database.
You got peeps.
Well, thank you for all of that information. We'll talk about UVA's defense, picks for the game, and James Franklin's recruiting trail already off to a hot start after a message from one of our sponsors at Tech Sideline.
Are you ready for a custom home tailored to your distinctive lifestyle? At Tyrus Homes, a leading custom home builder in the New River Valley, we pride ourselves on crafting exceptional residences that our clients love to call home. Whether you're a first-time buyer, a growing family in search for more room, an active adult seeking a relaxing retreat, or looking for a higher-end custom home that offers luxury and sophistication, we have the perfect solution for you. Discover how you can bring your dream home to life at TyrusHomes.com. That's TYRIS Homes.com.
All right, well, let's continue the discussion with the UVA defense. And when you take a look at them this year, do you see them as particularly stronger against the rush or the pass, or balance between both?
I think they're a little bit better against the run, but they are extremely balanced. the passing yards per game is always not necessarily a great thing to look at. If you look at their opposing quarterback rating, I think it's in the 30s. So they're good and efficient against stopping the pass as well. They're just solid across the board. I mean, again, senior, graduate student, junior, graduate student, junior, junior, senior, graduate student, sophomore, graduate student.
So the sophomore Ethan Mentors, I think he's homegrown.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But 13 of their top 19 defensive players. So they have 19 defensive players who have played 200-plus snaps this year. 13 of them are transfers. And, most of their offensive players are transfers. So, this is just going to be a bunch of new players on the field for UVA as compared to last year.
Yeah, but they've really, I think they've done a really good job of coming together. It helps when you've got a really, really good player in Cam Robinson, who, as Will mentioned earlier, will not be playing for the Hokies this week. He tore his ACL in the Duke game, as Tony Elliott announced yesterday. I think Cam Robinson was maybe one of their best defensive
Certainly
players.
the most dynamic.
Yeah. And I mean, he's an in-state kid. As Chris wrote in the preview, one of the few in-state recruiting battles the Hokies have lost to the Cavaliers over the last couple of years. A guy that I know Chris spoke really highly of when he was a prospect. But this is a UVA defense, a lot of experience. I think just does a really good job of being balanced at everything. Now, some of the offenses UVA's played, maybe not the most dynamic, but at the same time, you play who's put in front of you. And as Chris mentioned, there was a time in the middle of the season when this UVA offense had struggled, and they had to rely on the defense, and the defense was there. I mean, only holding Wake Forest to 16 points, UVA should have won that game.
7 of those were on a punt return.
Yeah. So really, I mean,
9 points. Really.
9 points, and it would UVA put up 9 points. So you don't allow that punt return that changed the game, and you might be going to overtime in that game. And Chandler Morris was hurt, right? And so, this is a UVA defense that has done just enough in every game, it feels like, to give the offense a chance. And it's going up against the Virginia Tech offense that's been very one-dimensional.
And when you take a look at their roster as a whole, as David mentioned, Robinson out for the game against Tech, but also the season, so whatever Virginia goes to afterwards, are there any other specific players who could cause some havoc for UVA defensively?
I think their strong safety, Devin Neal, is a really good player, and I think Mitchell Melton, one of their edge players, is really good. He's got 10 tackles for loss and 5 sacks on the season. So I think they're balanced across the board, but those two guys are ones that really stand out.
And I don't remember which guy it was, Chris, but you wrote in the preview that one of their backup
defensive ends whose name I forget off the top of my head.
He's got
it's Daniel Rickert. 6'2", 232. He's not quite big enough to be an every down player, but he's another senior and he backs up the defensive end. Their starting defensive ends are really good, but then they bring in their backup defensive end who's also a senior.
He's a graduate student.
6 tackles for loss and 5 sacks. He's basically their Ben Bell.
Yeah.
He's kind of an undersized guy on the edge, except he doesn't have to start like Ben Bell has to start.
I mean, they've got a lot of depth. I mean, that, like Chris just said, that's a guy who's coming in relief, and he's had more production than you would say maybe part of Virginia Tech's entire defensive line this season.
Right.
Never mind the money that they're throwing into NIL, which is probably tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
That's a player personnel feat to bring in that many guys and have so many of them wind up being very productive starters for them. It's not just the money, it's the logistics.
Yeah, absolutely, because Florida State is a transfer-heavy program. And
look
they
how
have
that's
not gotten
turning
it right the last couple of years, have they?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see if the Hokies get it right.
Right.
I'm sure James Franklin's going to bring in
Yeah, it's going to be a different team next year, man.
Yeah.
Well, let's flip it to Virginia Tech's offense. I think a big question is going to be the rushing attack, where you've seen Jeff Overton start getting some action, but also the health of Marcellus Hawkins may play a part here.
Yeah, I mean, when Andy spoke with Phil Montgomery on yesterday, it seemed like he was hopeful that Marcellus Hawkins he had a good practice Tuesday. Hopefully he was going to be able to go this week. Hokies need him desperately.
Yeah. I mean, you look at it and you just can't see any path to victory without him. And that's odd to say with a guy who's only scored 1 touchdown this year, but it's not his fault that he's only scored 1 touchdown this year.
I mean, if Terrion Stewart wants to have an NC State-like game, he can be that guy, but Hawkins has been the better running back.
Probably part of it is because Kyron Drones has 9 rushing touchdowns, and most of the time you get to the goal line, you just hand it off to let your big quarterback.
I'm telling you,
take it.
Hawkins is like the running back in Varsity Blues. He had like a 1,500-yard rusher, scores 3 touchdowns all year.
And so now the tailbacks have 3 rushing touchdowns, right? Because of Overton. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and I believe Andy's writing a Jeffrey Overton feature this week, so keep an eye for that.
Well, and you mentioned Kyron Drones. Is it going to be the Kyron Drones show for the final, or could Pop Watson find any way into the game?
I still think it'll be Drones.
I think they're going to ride or die with Drones.
Yeah, I mean, he's down to the last game of the season. And again,
last game of his career.
That's right. And again, the weakness with Pop is what he does under pressure. And don't get me wrong, it's not like Drones is great there, but he doesn't like freeze up, right? He gets outside the pocket a lot, and Drones does. Yeah. Pop, you go back to last season, those 3 games, the 2 games where he was pressured, he just froze up in the pocket and had negative rushing yards and just didn't throw the ball.
Yeah.
And the one game he wasn't pressured against UVA, I mean, they could barely get in the backfield last year. And he went off on them. Yeah. But they're going to be able to get in the backfield this year. Now, it was a mixed bag under pressure last week. He made a great throw to Aiden Green for a big gainer, but then he also stood there and took the sack when he got fumbled. So that's been the knock on him from the very beginning, is how he handles pressures. A lot of time when the pressure comes, he just freezes up and doesn't do anything. He doesn't scramble. He doesn't throw it. And behind this offensive line, you're going to be facing pressure on at least half your snaps. So you can't really have that. So I think they'll most likely go with Drones.
Yeah, I mean, you can't discredit Kyron Drones' effort. I mean, he has run through guys every single game, and this Virginia Tech offense we've seen is at its best this year when it is running the ball effectively. He's a big part of that. The other thing is, can the Hokies be balanced enough? And that's a lot of pressure on Drones. He's got to complete passes, but
yeah, you've got to do the math in your head. We don't know exactly what Pop would add as a passer.
Yeah,
we don't know that he would add anything, because we don't know how well he would do against the pass rush mentally. But we know if you take Drones off the field, you lose 609 yards and 9 touchdowns, right? And Pop would replace some of that, but probably maybe
they're
not
much
all
different
of it.
runners.
Yeah, they are different.
And the other thing is, I'm interested to see if Terrion Stewart can get a little bit more involved. He only had like 3 touches last week, and it's hard when you're giving Jeff Overton a bunch of new touches too. But Hokies have 3 really good running backs. That's probably the biggest strength of their entire team. It's like if they can do that effectively behind an offensive line that is not great at pass blocking, but is much better run blocking. It's like if you can do that and keep UVA off balance a little bit, you'll have a chance. But
run the dang ball, man.
Yeah.
And throw a pass on one of those pitches.
So,
at some point. Because Marcellus Hawkins was a high school quarterback. Should I have to point that out anymore?
So the other thing is you got to remember that this coaching staff isn't making any decisions for the future. If they were going to be here next year, maybe they would weigh, if we like Pop, do we need to play him some to keep him happy? There's none of that going on.
Right.
These guys are going to go out there and coach to try to win the game. There may be a little psychology of how Kyron has played so hard, and I thought last year Kyron, I got to figure out how to phrase this, was careful with contact. I haven't seen that this year. He's committing his body. He's playing hard, and the coaches psychologically may want to continue to reward him for that, but man, there's no planning for the future. So if you're sitting there saying, well, they should play Pop to try to keep him, that's got nothing to do with next year's team. It really doesn't.
Right. No, you play the players you think are going to help you win this game. You got one game. I mean, throw the kitchen sink at them. This is where you pull out your trick plays, and if Stu Holt's ever going to run a fake punt, you run it this week, right?
Maybe
or
a pass to an offensive tackle inside the 5-yard line.
Man, I was going to make that joke.
Yeah.
It is Scott Stadium after all.
Well, speaking of special teams, is there anything of note for UVA in that category?
They're pretty good. They're not dominant, but they're good. They've given up some punt return yardage this year. Obviously, the one against Wake Forest that ended up being the difference in the game. So Tech could have a little bit more room in the return game this week. Bedridge, their kicker's very good. I think he's 18 of 22 It's funny, there's a bug in the UVA website, so it lists his longest field goal of the year as 405 yards. It's very impressive. I would
around the earth.
I don't want to see him.
times.
I don't want to see him kick any field goals this week against Tech, but I would actually love to see him kick a 405 yarder. That would be incredible. But I think they're 7th in the country in kickoff return yards allowed. So I feel like if you're going to gain any yardage in special teams, it's going to have to be in punt return, but that's not something that's been a strength for the Hokies.
The Hokies would have to force punts.
Yes,
and they did.
After Miami snapped it past their quarterback's head.
Yeah.
Right.
Ouch.
But didn't return any.
Right.
Didn't return it.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing is Bettridge is really, really good. Surprise, surprise. He's a senior. So that's.
Oh, their punter's also a senior.
Yes. It's like they're going to replace their entire team.
Well, as we round out our thoughts before making the picks, once again, the overarching theme for Virginia Tech is trying to play spoiler this week. And as Coach Montgomery said as well in the presser, you almost don't have to talk to the players to really tell them how important this game is to them.
Yeah. And I say this every year, and you wonder when it's going to stop. But, like, the more transfers you take, the more out-of-state guys you take, how much do they truly get it? I mean, Tech has done a good job putting Virginia kids on the roster, like from the portal, like Gilliam and Copeland, right? They're from Virginia, but like it's not like Ben Bell and Cody Heisman and Isaiah Cash grew up playing against UVA players in high school. And it's the same for the UVA players. This is a bunch of out-of-state players. This is a bunch of kids from North Carolina and New Jersey and Texas and California and Florida playing against each other in a Virginia Tech-Virginia game.
Yeah, and you go back to the early mid-2000s when this rivalry is arguably still at its peak.
Yes.
And you look at the rankings of in-state recruits from that era, 2003 class, for example. The top 25 recruits in the state, there were literally years where 20 or 21 of them either went to Tech or UVA. Mm-hmm. And once Tech had a lot of success, the SEC teams and Big Ten teams started descending, and you started to see a lot of the top 25 kids go out of state. I think it started with Percy Harvin in 2005 when he didn't even visit Tech and went to Florida, which turned out to be a really smart decision. Not bad-mouthing Percy. That was a really good decision. But, yeah, man, back in the day, kids didn't transfer out. The recruiting classes were packed with in-state kids, and they stayed with the program, so it was a heavy in-state presence on both teams, and it's not the same way anymore.
I've got some friends on those mid-90s Tech teams. So like the 95 and 96 games, and I'm not saying this because Tech won them. I think those games were the pinnacle.
Yeah.
In terms of those two games featured the most combined talent from both games. And those guys knew each other. Like Cornell Brown and Anthony Poindexter knew each other. They were both from Lynchburg. Yeah. These days there aren't any football players from Lynchburg. Yeah. Right? I mean, that place just doesn't really produce football players anymore. So the demographics are a lot different in this rivalry these days. It's more, but I'm not saying the players don't care because they do. You see a brawl or a mini fight break out in this game every year.
A lot of trash talking at midfield.
But it is a different vibe.
Yeah. I mean, you look through. I think from your list, there are only two guys on the Virginia Tech starting lineup that are from Virginia.
And that's Gilliam and Copeland?
Oh, I was looking at the offense.
Oh, you were looking at the offense.
That would be Takai Heath and I guess Benji Gosnell.
Right.
But defense, yeah, I mean, Gilliam and Copeland and Caleb Spencer's from Virginia.
And so is Sheldon Robinson.
Yeah. So maybe more on the defensive side of the ball. You know, it's interesting. Like we talked to Tyson Flowers after the Miami game. He's a Texas guy, I believe. And he said, I asked him about the rivalry, and he said, most important thing I learned the first day I got here is we hate UVA here.
Really?
So, it's.
Wonder who filled him in on that.
Yeah, I no idea, but it's interesting because you got to pass down that lineage. Now on the coaching staff, you've got plenty of people who played in this rivalry, won in this rivalry. Xavier Debe, Jerron Gavea Winslow, J.C. Price. You've got people who have lived it, but it's different when you bring in so many people that have never played in it, experienced it. And you look at a lot of these UVA guys, they've never played in this rivalry. So it'll be interesting to see just how they handle it. It's a lot of pressure on UVA this week. Like Hokies go in with no pressure.
And the energy, I would argue that the energy doesn't come from the stands either. Maybe it does in Lane Stadium, but at UVA, so many.
They haven't sold out this game. This is their biggest home game in years.
Man,
it might decide whether they go to the playoff.
They used to sell that place out, man.
I know. They expanded their stadium before Virginia Tech did. Remember that?
Yep. Man.
To over 60,000 before Virginia Tech did. And we were like, wow, we got to catch up to UVA in stadium size. And they were selling it out every week. And now they can't. This is the biggest home game for them in years, and they haven't sold it out.
Well, maybe
now partly that's because Virginia Tech fans aren't buying up their. Well, still.
And the fans are buying the tickets.
You're right. Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm not saying UVA fans are skipping because Tech sucks. I'm saying Tech
fans are skipping because we normally sell out this game for them.
None of my friends are going.
Right.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people. I mean, I don't know if Nick is going, but there are, I think, a lot of Virginia Tech people. The last couple of times Hokies have played there, they're like, "Yep, can't wait to go and can't wait to be on the field after the game and after the Hokies beat UVA in Charlottesville." And I think a lot of people this year are like, "It's gonna be cold, and
it is gonna be cold.
It's gonna be cold. It's gonna be a night game, and the Hokies probably aren't gonna win. And I'm just gonna stay at home and not waste
watch
my
all
time."
the rivalry games.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say this about UVA: I'm glad they're good this year. I think the fact that they went all in on football this year more than Virginia Tech from a financial standpoint, I think that probably helps when you're trying to raise money for James Franklin. You could go to some of those big donors and say, "Look, the UVA donors did a good job buying a football team this year. They wanted to win this year more than Virginia Tech did." We went 20 years without them hitting back in football. And when we patted ourselves on the back for beating them, when honestly they weren't even committed to football. Right? And I think that's one of the reasons for the downfall of Virginia Tech's program. Not the only reason, there are a lot more, but that's one of the things is like, you can sit there at the end of the season and, well, at least we beat UVA and retain the Commonwealth Cup, so people get complacent with stuff like that. And they're most likely going to handle Tech on Saturday night. It's going to hurt, and it's good. You need to hurt sometimes. You need to lose to your rival sometimes to give yourself a kick in the butt.
Yeah.
And Tech hasn't had that for 20 years almost, just about. And so I'm glad they're good this year because it's you need that competition. I think a healthy rivalry makes both schools better because like you have to win that game, right? And UVA is finally treating it like, oh, we have to win that game. They went all in this offseason on a roster, and we'll force Virginia Tech to respond.
Yeah, you haven't seen a UVA team like this where UVA was this much better than Virginia Tech coming in.
Right.
Teal told us yesterday, never has UVA come into this game with 6 more wins than the Hokies.
Never.
The Hokies have done it. The Hokies did it in 2016, I believe. Bronco Mendenhall and Justin Fuentes' first year. But this is a wide margin, and Chris is exactly right. I think a lot of times Virginia Tech fans can't come into this. They've won, you won 3 games this year, and you're like, well, as long as we beat UVA at the end of the year, it's not happening.
I hate it when people say we can go 1-11 and I'd be happy as long as it wins over UVA. No, you would not.
You would not.
No, absolutely not. We'd all have to go out and get different jobs. Right?
Yeah.
That would not make anybody
maybe not right
happy.
away, but
maybe not right away, but eventually, if it kept happening.
Yeah. But it's like, I think a lot of people are like, oh, Hokies will be fine. They'll beat UVA at the end of the season. Like, it's probably not happening this year, man. No. And you know what? I think it's a little bit of a wake-up call, a little bit of a reality check that you have to invest in football, and the Hokies are. They are. And we spent a lot of time talking about this over the last couple of weeks, last couple of months, about the Board of Visitors and going out and getting James Franklin and James Franklin's contract. I mean, all this stuff, right? Tech is investing. It's not going to show up in this game. Probably will show up next year, but this is just, I think, a preview of what happens when one team invests in the rivalry and the other team does not.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's the old thing of better get us now because you're not going to get us in the future.
Yeah.
Well, we've laid out the matchup, so let's go through who do you think wins the game and what's the score?
I've got it 31-17 UVA, I believe is what my score prediction was, and Virginia Tech hasn't scored 20 points in its last 3 games, and Virginia barely allows 20 points anyway. And then when you look at it on the other end, Virginia Tech can't stop anybody from scoring around 30. I think they've given up 30-plus in 5 of their last 6 games. So I'm going to go with the trend.
I was just showing Will what he picked.
To reminding me, although I remember it. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, so I picked Virginia 38, Virginia Tech 20. Andy picked Virginia 34, Virginia Tech 20. So very similar. Andy, of course, is already on his way to Richmond, and that's why I'm sitting here. This is the first preview podcast I've done since the South Carolina game when you were gone, and I filled in for you. I think the Hokies have a chance, Riley. I mean, it's not that they don't, but you got to play disciplined. You got to get after the quarterback. You have to be more than you can't be one-dimensional offensively, and we haven't really seen that for 4 quarters this year. They played some good football in moments, but I think back to that Wake Forest game when the Diekman Deacons threw it right to Isaiah Brown Murray over the middle. He set him up at the 4-yard line, and they couldn't punch it in. It's you have to take advantage of every little opportunity, and we just haven't seen that. And this is a very good UVA team that, honestly, I think might be in the College Football Playoff, which is kind of scary to say. I mean, think about that from a Virginia Tech perspective.
Go Narduzzi.
Yes, or SMU.
Yeah.
But you think about that from a Virginia Tech perspective, that not only might UVA have its biggest margin of victory in maybe 30-something years in this rivalry game, but the Cavaliers might end up being in the College Football Playoff. That's a reality check.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't feel very good. So this is the weirdest prediction. Do I think UVA is going to win? Yes, I do. Am I going to pick them to win? No. So the buy or sell line on this game is UVA will score 31 plus points. That's one of the lines. And you should participate in buy or sell. You should watch the video. It's a lot of fun. Virginia Tech's last, 6 opponents or something like that have averaged 31 points a game. It's likely that Virginia Tech's going to give up maybe 31 points. So I got to pick, if I'm going to pick Virginia Tech to win, means I got to pick them to score more than 31 points. So Virginia Tech 34, UVA 31, but we're sitting here talking about all these offensive things.
You got to explain why.
Voodoo, man. Voodoo.
No.
Things that are more likely to happen than Virginia Tech scoring 34 points in a football game. We could do a 5-hour podcast.
Hold on. I'm going to read what Will wrote in the game preview, because you wrote that. Chris is going to laugh at this.
It's got to do with
Will, you literally wrote Chris Coleman picked UVA to win, and I picked Virginia Tech to win. That was 2018. That was the last time.
Right.
You said basically that
Chris leads by
one.
Staff picks.
I did look at Chris Coleman's prediction for this preview. Chris leads by 1 at 8-3. David, Nick, and I are 7-4. And if I want to catch him, I'm going to have to pick the opposite.
How did I get up by 1? Did I pick Tech to beat Cal?
Vanderbilt.
That's right.
We all picked Tech to beat Vanderbilt except you.
And then every single person except for Andy who picked Cal.
I think the reason I picked Tech to lose to Vanderbilt is because I thought South Carolina looked awful against Virginia Tech.
You were correct.
So I didn't think Tech seemed as good as a lot of people thought.
I think the rest of us probably picked with our hearts on that one, which Andy doesn't usually do that. I'm surprised that he picked Tech to beat Vanderbilt.
No, I didn't think they were going to win by 24. But
yeah, well, it's funny because I think you think that UVA is going to win, but you're doing it just because you want to get even. You want to have the same record as Chris.
Further.
Yeah,
but I'm also rationalizing. It's just painful. So anyway, we did talk about in 2018 was the last time UVA was favored, and Chris picked. That was back when just Chris and I were doing previews. Chris picked UVA to win. I picked Tech to win, and Tech won. So voodoo.
That was a much closer game. Nick, here's the funny thing. Nick did not, before we recorded this, Nick had not yet submitted his prediction. So I'm curious what Nick is.
All right. Let's go down memory lane, folks. 2007, West Virginia, one game away from playing in the national championship.
13-9. Very popular t-shirt.
They bring in 3-8 Pitt, or 2-8 Pitt, or something like that, or 2-9.
They were bad.
Pitt. 2-9 Pitt, I believe. And Pitt beat them 13-9. Hokies win 13-9. Chandler Morris doesn't do anything, and Virginia Tech stuns UVA, and that is going to be their most painful loss, just like that loss to West Virginia is the most painful loss in West Virginia football history. I want to shout out my pastor, by the way, Timothy Worrells, huge West Virginia fan, and he has filled me. He's grew up huge West Virginia fan all his life, and he says that is the worst day of his childhood, bar none. He just cannot remember a worse day in his life than that day. So UVA fans, this is going to be the worst day of your life.
There's more to the story. You youngins didn't watch that game. I watched that game. That game was in Morgantown. The officials did everything they could to will West Virginia to victory. That's one of the most crooked, horribly officiated games I've ever seen throughout. And that awful Pitt team still won 13-9. I'm sorry, I can't remember all of the details, but there were at least 3 plays where the refs just made horrible calls in favor of West Virginia, and Pitt won anyway.
And Rich Rod left after that game.
Yep, and I mean,
so they went
but Pat McAfee missed 2 field goals that would have won them that game.
Oh, wow. Pat McAfee was their kicker. Wow.
Yeah.
This is so they went from being on the verge of playing for a national championship to their program just being gutted by the.
Yeah,
if Pat McAfee ever invites me on his show, I'm gonna get a 13-9 shirt.
Well, so it's funny. So when for the Notre Dame Pitt game day was at Pitt. College game day was at Pitt for the first time in 20 years, like 2 weeks ago, for the Notre Dame Pitt game. And the Pitt fans were giving McAfee crap because they were chanting 13-9 when he was talking about West Virginia. It was very funny.
That's good.
Well, those are the picks for this game. Let's close out this podcast by talking about the future with James Franklin already active in terms of recruitment. He picked up a commitment from Messiah Mickens, a running back who was rated 4 stars, previously committed to Penn State, brings him over to a potentially stacked running back room. But as we break down what he's doing here, the team is playing in Charlottesville, but Franklin can be active boots on the ground in Blacksburg this week in terms of visits too.
Unanimous 4-star recruit, Messiah Mickens. You know, some people get called a 4-star recruit and they're 4-star by one service and then 3-star by the other 2, or 4-star by 2 and 3-star by 1. But he's 4-star by every single service. So that makes it unanimous. And yeah, it is a unique weekend. While Virginia Tech is playing in a football game in Charlottesville on Saturday night, James Franklin is going to be hosting recruits on official visits in Blacksburg. And I don't think Virginia Tech is done picking up commitments this week. We're going to see a flurry of them between now and next signing day.
Just not tomorrow, please.
I just hope they don't do it while I'm in the car tomorrow. Just do all your commitments later today or on Friday or over the weekend. Just don't do them tomorrow. Yeah. But you know what? There'll be like 5 tomorrow now that I say that.
Yeah, they don't. Recruits clearly do not factor in when our working hours.
They should.
Mickens is. I mean, he's a really, really highly rated recruit. I mean, we're talking a top 10 kid in Pennsylvania. First time the Hokies have gotten a top 10 Pennsylvania kid since 2014. Shy McKenzie. I looked this up. The last time Virginia Tech had a unanimous 4-star running back, you had to go back to David Wilson. I mean, we're talking 2009. That was before 24/7 Sports even existed. Yeah. That's got started in 2010. This is a big time get. I mean, it's the first of many to come. And Hokies start off with a bang. They had plenty of guys in town this past weekend. Chris and I have pre-written a ton of articles because there are a bunch of guys in line that seems like they're flipping to the Hokies or coming from a variety of places, and they've got a bunch of guys in town this weekend. And it's very unique situation, like James Franklin and the recruiting staff, they're going to be hosting guys this weekend on official visit, despite the team not being in town, like playing a game on the road. You got to take advantage of every opportunity you can get. And this time next week, a week from today, is signing day. So I think Hokies are going to have a ton of guys in the boat between now and then, and maybe a couple on signing day as well.
Tech was 124th in the 247 recruiting class rankings before Mickens' commitment yesterday. It's going to be interesting to see what they are at the end of the day next Wednesday.
Yeah.
Well, that closes our thoughts on that. And as we get towards the end of this podcast, anything special coming up on TechSideline.com?
I think Andy's working on a mailbag and an Overton article.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a recruiting article this afternoon to catch everybody up on what's going on. And I'll have a Friday Q&A also.
And basketball. A lot of basketball.
Three games in 3 days
for the men.
For the men.
5 games in 4 days total between the men and the women. I'll have a women's preview up later. Wrote my men's preview, posted that yesterday. We recorded a basketball video. Go check that out. Talked for about 30, 45 minutes about about the men and the women. We got talking with Teal too. Guys, I'm not looking forward to the 7:00 kick, and I'm certainly not looking forward to it being 30 degrees at 8 p.m. in an open air press box.
So they get all those donations and throw them in the NIL. They can't enclose their
This
press
is
box.
why I enjoy going down to Florida over Thanksgiving to cover basketball so much, because I get to hang out in 60, 70 degree weather in Florida and don't have to cover a game in an open air press box.
You should have done that this year in hindsight.
Well, the Bahamas is way too expensive.
I've been in that press box, and you know, if you guys have never seen David Cunningham type, but he types faster than anybody I know. It's like a contest between him and my son Ronan. They're both like super fast. It is hard to type in that press box when it's 30 freaking degrees outside.
It's the last time I think I will have covered a game where it's this cold in an open air press box. On top of the 2021 UVA game was the Pinstripe Bowl in New York, because Yankee Stadium is an open air press box, and we had that UVA game and Yankee Stadium back to back. It's just it's one of those where it's like you can't feel your fingers afterwards.
It makes sense for a baseball stadium to be open air press box.
I don't know why UVA does it, but
There you go. Nick, anything else in terms of audio, video that we should be taking a look for?
Yeah, we did a basketball video yesterday. That was really good. If you want to have a quick preview of the 2 tournaments this week and a recap of the beginning of the season, awesome stuff. And yeah, talking with Teal was yesterday. Another great video.
What about the video you did with the kid who went out to the airport?
Oh yeah, Nate Large. That was awesome. That was last Friday. He was fantastic. A lot of fun. Before we leave, I want to talk about talking with Teal. 3 nominees for Virginia Sports Writer of the Year on that video. So shout out David, shout out the other David, and shout out Andy. So awesome stuff. That's super cool that we have amassed a collection of talent for our podcast each week.
Yeah, so you need to, when you put the video up on YouTube, you need to put the nominees up on screen so people can see them. There's 2 TSL people in there, David and Andy, and like no other organization has more than 1, right?
yeah. Pretty cool.
Yeah, some special stuff there. So make sure to keep an eye out on all that is on the channel. But thank you for watching this one, episode 457 of the Tech Sideline podcast. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and refer the show to a friend if you haven't already. For Chris Coleman, Will Stewart, David Cunningham, and Nick Brown behind the scenes, I'm Riley Klaus saying so long for now.